that would have been necessary to conduct the attack that we saw on the 11th. We haven't yet publicly identified the organization we believe was responsible. But when you look at the list of candidates, one resides in that region. So without waiting for the whole body of evidence to be ready for us to make a judgment and a presentation to you, I think we're acting in a prudent way by talking to those governments in the region.
Now, when explicitly asked if, in fact, Secretary Powell was alluding to Osama bin Laden, he said yes. Pakistan has been high on the U.S. agenda. Secretary Powell says he expects to speak with the Pakistani president later today. His deputy met again for the second time in 24 hours with the U.S. ambassador to Pakistan here in Washington. There have been meetings in Islamabad. So, Aaron, what we're seeing right now, this is one part of the diplomatic puzzle, is the U.S. beginning to tighten the noose around Afghanistan. We're told that in the meeting this morning here at the State Department, the Pakistani ambassador was presented with a list of what the U.S. expects, concrete actions that the Pakistanis must take. Unfortunately, we don't have details on that right now, Aaron.
Andrea, thank you. Andrea Koppel at the State Department. She works the diplomatic side of this. Back to this possibility that a building has collapsed or maybe about to collapse. Adam Reese is the CNN producer who's in the area. And Adam, I believe you're on the phone, aren't you?
Yes, Aaron. I am reporting to you from the Office of Emergency Management, just a block north of where the World Trade Center was. And we are hearing from police officers here on site that they are being instructed to leave the area. The building just south of the World Financial Center, we believe, is the American Express Merrill Lynch building, and we believe that is possibly going to collapse very soon. And just let me preface that with, we believe it may. We are seeing smoke come from windows about mid-building, and the smoke believes to be emanating from the windows. It is going from floor to floor, higher and higher. I don't know why they believe this building is about to collapse. They have had warnings when previous buildings were going to collapse. And that's just the situation here. They have been pulled back. Emergency workers have been pulled back from that area, and that's where it stands. Aaron?
Adam, if you could see the building, I assume you can. You can see the smoke. How big a building are we talking about?
I am looking at it from the rear. Again, we are just outside the building where AM is doing their business. Inside the building, a makeshift hospital, makeshift IV, stretchers, beds, also beds for all the workers. Every floor of that building, just to give you an idea, the amount of people down here involved in this rescue effort. And again, regarding the building that we believe may collapse, it's still standing. I see smoke emanating from the windows, and that's about all I can tell you. I have just a narrow view of the side of the building from my location.
So is it a large skyscraper? I think is what I'm trying to figure out here. Are we talking 60, 70 stories?
I'm hoping that you can see it at some point soon. These are the two buildings that are equal in height, just west of where the World Trade Center was standing. This is what's called the World Financial Center, and again, headquarters to American Express and Merrill Lynch. Fairly new buildings in regards to the World Trade Center. I don't know exactly when they were built, but they are much newer than the World Trade Center was.
And do you have any sense of, can you see people moving out of the area? Are they rushing out of the area? Is it a fairly calm evacuation? Just give me what you can see here.
Some of the rescue workers are calm. I did see several officers who are a bit nervous, and you can clearly see their anxiety. These officers were the ones that were most likely closest to that building who were asked to evacuate, and they are describing to fellow officers their high concern about the building and the fact that they were so close to it before they got this warning.
And just again for me, Adam, can you tell me the building's proximity to the Trade Center itself?
Literally across the street from where it was, just a bit south on the West Side Highway. It is basically towards the southernmost end of Manhattan, what we here call the Battery. And if we're looking north from, say, Liberty Island, where the Statue of Liberty is, or Ellis Island, you would clearly be able to see it. It is one of the southernmost buildings on the island of Manhattan.
Adam, stay on the phone. Don't go away here. Many of you may remember late yesterday afternoon there was a concern about another building in the area just a bit north of where the collapsed building number 7 was. We were down there at the time. We could see windows or pieces of glass facing to the building coming off. That was One Liberty Plaza. That's on the right side of your screen. And they moved people out at that time. There are a couple of points to make here, and forgive me if they're frighteningly obvious. The problems here, number one, are safety issues. You got to get all the rescue workers away from there. Every time one of these buildings seems to be maybe ready to come down. And the other problem is if these buildings don't come down, and yet they are so unstable that they might, at what point is it safe to move people back in? So, and if you have to bring the building down yourself, is that an operation that's going to have to be undertaken? So there are a multitude of problems that exist down there, and the end result of all of it is it slows down. It doesn't stop it, but it slows down the effort to get in there and find whoever may still be in one of these air pockets, or as we learned today, in an SUV with the 5 firefighters that were pulled out. It slows the effort to get to the survivors, if in fact there are survivors left. So the situation down by the Trade Center and the blocks around it, and Gary Tuchman yesterday reported that the damage, extensive damage, extends 10 blocks from the Trade Center. Some of the buildings destroyed, many of them just damaged, tremendous amount of structural instability, and all of that is causing problems. Adam, are you still on the phone? Adam, okay, for the moment we've lost Adam. We'll try and get him back and see if he can update us on that. Just one quick observation before we move on. It strikes me today that the city is unbelievably tense. There have been a number of evacuations we've told you about of buildings. There's a real sense of fear in some cases, of anger building at what's going on. It's been a very long and difficult week for everyone here in the city, everyone who lives here, everyone who loves it, as it has been for people around the country. The tension level here just struck me. There's nothing scientific about this, folks. It's just a feeling that things here are fraying a bit as people begin to realize that normal, or what psychologists in these situations refer to as the new normal, because what was normal in New York City, what was normal in Washington, what was normal in the country in many ways, will never quite be the same. And so we search for what the new normal is. People are beginning to realize that that new normal is going to take some time to get to. And in the meantime, we've got a lot of stress and fear and anxiety that's being dealt with. And every time one of these things happens, the possibility of a building collapsing, as we have with the American Express building, which is being evacuated, the people around it out. We went through the same thing with One Liberty Plaza yesterday. Every time that happens, every time there's a crank call somewhere or anything like it, it just raises the anxiety level. It frays the nerves yet again. And I dare say it makes people a little bit angry, or maybe more than a little bit angry. And now, on 3 days later, it's palpable. You just kind of feel it out there today, down below on the streets. People are frustrated and tired and angry, and want to know where we as a city, where the city of New York goes next. Marty Savage has been covering for us today the rescue of firefighters down on the scene. Marty, do you have new developments on that, or is it something else?
Well, basically, Aaron, we can report to you the situation regarding this building. We cannot verify what Adam has said. He's obviously quite accurate. What we can tell you, though, is that the activity out here on the West Side Highway, which is one of the main thoroughfares for all the emergency equipment, has been brought to a standstill here. So it appears that something is going on. There also have been some talk earlier in the day coming from the site that there were at least 2 buildings that were considered so unstable that the thought, at least, was being given to the prospect of possibly purposefully bringing them down, either by triggering some explosives or other means, because just as you point out, the threat of that hanging over the heads of rescuers is a problem, a serious problem, and they need to try to resolve it one way or another. Now, last night there were engineers that were literally going through many of the buildings surrounding the area where the Twin Towers did stand there for the World Trade Center, trying to verify what was the structural integrity. The Liberty One Plaza building was one building that got the okay. They said it is all right. Suffered a lot of damage, but it is not in danger of falling down. Other buildings, though, that they said could be potentially threatened were building number 5 out of the World Trade Center complex, and also the Millennium Hotel. So there has been this concern. It's been an ongoing concern. We already had a number of collapses yesterday, and there has even been talk that despite the fact that a building maybe on the outside could look rather fit, that it could actually be very much unsound, especially if the lower floors have been damaged to a severe degree, or any of the major support structures. Then on the other hand, there are buildings that look extremely damaged, like the Verizon building that has a huge hole in the front of it, and yet they are deemed to be structurally sound. So appearances are not all what they seem to be when you look out at the devastation here, Aaron.
Marty, stay where you are. You seem to have a terrific vantage point of what's going on. So just stay with me. Let me go back to Adam Reese on the telephone. Adam, you're at the emergency command post. What are you hearing, and what can you tell us?
Aaron, I can second what Marty just said. These two buildings certainly look structurally sound. However, the smoke continues to come out of the windows, and police, like I said before, have moved back, and they are all looking up, it appears in anticipation of a collapse. Yet at this point, the building continues to stand. What I can tell you is the smoke continues to move through this area. Police continue to move out all the gear that they had in that area, because they were making some progress in terms of evacuating some of the debris. We see dozens and dozens of cadaver dogs coming through this area. I spoke to one of the owners of a cadaver dog earlier. These cadaver dogs are highly sensitive. They can pick up any body part. They can pick up something as small as a nail. And so obviously they're being diverted at every movement. As far as this building is concerned, still status quo. We see smoke continuing to emanate from those same windows about midway up, and it appears to be a structurally sound building. But as Marty said, with the collapse of the towering World Trade Center, the stability of the ground underneath these buildings is precarious. And so we're keeping an eye on it. Aaron?
It seems to be a structurally sound building with smoke coming out of it. That's not a very healthy sign. Martin Savage, pick up where you are with what you can tell us.
Well, we're still trying to make note, Aaron, of activity going on now. We watched the streets sort of being cleared for a fire truck to make its way down the West Side Highway here. There is no pandemonium here. There is no one screaming, get back, anything like that. And there are a lot of people that are in the immediate area, at least where we are. So we are about, I would say, 5 blocks away. And so if there is a sense of disaster about to strike, it is not felt here. One of the things I can point out about what Adam was reporting regarding the search for remains, the ability to try to identify. I was talking with some of those that worked all last night, and they're digging in there, in some cases literally digging with a shovel and turning up the earth. In every particular case, every shovelful of dirt that they dig up, it is then placed into a barrel, and then that dirt is sifted through, looking for any sign of evidence and any sign of human remains that could be used to help identify. That's how thorough they are being, and that is how hopeful they are that they will try to identify as many people as they can. But it also shows you just how long that process could take when every shovelful has to be looked through. Aaron?
Marty, thank you. You guys keep an eye on things, and we'll get back to you as things develop at the American Express building. But again, the building's being evacuated, and the concern is that it's going down. CNN's Bob Franken is at the Pentagon. Bob, good afternoon to you. What do you have?
Well, Aaron, I wanted to tell you a moment ago, you were talking about how normal is changing so much in the United States now. And I was fascinated by the conversation you had a while ago with our national security correspondent, David Ensor, talking about the different role now that intelligence and security might play in the life of the United States, a departure from the traditions here. And there was another example today of how the face of life in the United States might be changing when the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Paul Wolfowitz, at a briefing, talked about aircraft, about jet aircraft, the combat aircraft we've seen over Washington, D.C. and New York the last couple of days as the country has tried to protect itself. Military aircraft flying over the United States. Now, Wolfowitz, to put it very mildly, is an understated man, but he talked about something quite remarkable in the briefing.
There are costs already incurred with combat air patrols that have been maintained over a significant number of American cities, including Washington. The costs mount rapidly, and they will mount more rapidly as this campaign develops.
This has not been something that the United States has seen, at least not in what had been called peacetime. But of course, many people are saying what we had here was a declaration of war in the United States. Now, you might be able to see over my shoulder the large American flag that has been unfurled over the Pentagon. That was put there by people just trying to express the continuing spirit of the U.S. In the face of the collision with the aircraft right next to it. Now, one of the people whose office was on the 4th floor under the flag managed to survive. It's Dick Goodman, who is a Navy lieutenant, who talked to me a while ago.
When we were out in the courtyard, there were some people that were injured and having trouble breathing. Helped them out as best we could. The people from the health clinic in the Pentagon hadn't come out yet with equipment yet, so made do with what you could. Tried to calm some people down, clear airways, and then I ended up going back in with a group of other people that had some medical training, and with some of the security folks, headed back into the building to see if there were other people who needed assistance.
And you can see the flag that is on the Pentagon. Under that flag on the 4th floor was Lieutenant Greg Goodman's office, describing what happened after he was able to get away and go out in the courthouse. He's an EMS technician. Now, he was lucky. He was one of the survivors. We're now being told by various people within the Pentagon that they are now expecting that the final casualty count will be, not casualty count, but the number of people who are killed by what occurred here will be approximately 190, and that would include the 64 who were on that American Airlines plane that crashed 2 days ago into the Pentagon. You can still see the evidence of it there. Body recovery is still going on, and Aaron, we're told that the remains will be taken to Dover, Delaware. That has been the place where the other victims of other wars that the United States has fought, other military actions, have been brought as they've been returned to the U.S. Of course, in this particular case, these are remains of people who died in what many people say is a military action in the United States. Aaron?
The number, again, just for clarification, includes the people on the plane that hit the Pentagon and the people in the Pentagon itself who were lost, correct?
That's right. It is 194. It includes the 64 who were on the plane, as well as those who they believe that they're going to find inside.
And we go back about 24 hours, and I think it might have been in the briefing, Bob, when Secretary Rumsfeld said that the reports that were coming out at the time, which had a death toll much, much higher. I believe the number that was being tossed around was about 800, was considerably too high. One never looks at a number like this, the 194 people, and says it is good news, but it is certainly better news than what it might have been.
Well, the people at the Pentagon, to be honest with you, were very irritated that that figure had been bandied about. We made a real point yesterday throughout the reporting to say that that was one estimate, an estimate from a fire chief here who admitted that he was only guessing. The Pentagon people repeatedly said they did not believe it was going to be that high. Then they told us that there were about 150 military people who were unaccounted for, who were inside the building, and now their estimate, and I underline estimate, is that there will be about 190.
Bob, thanks. Bob Franken at the Pentagon. This new normal that we are crawling towards, and that's really what's happening across the country, true baby steps, can be seen at Los Angeles International Airport, where international flights have now arrived. These are people, there were some 30,000 people stranded in Canada, some now getting home. Chris Burns is there and can tell us more about the scene at LAX. Chris?
Yes, I can. There's quite a few people getting off buses here. They just got off an Alitalia flight that arrived from Calgary, where they were there for a couple of days. The flight was diverted from a flight between Milan and Los Angeles, and the flight has now come to Los Angeles. With me is one of the passengers who was on the plane. His name is Viken Sulahin.
Yes.
Viken, how do you feel right now getting off that plane?
I feel very relieved. I'm very happy to be home, at least, and
but pretty anxious, weren't you?
very anxious. And we've been in the hotel waiting for the phone call that we've been calling the airline. When is the flight going to take off? And they would just keep on telling us that you have to wait in the hotel room until we call you.
Right.
So it was like
And how was the security like today?
it was very tough. We were in the airport since after midnight, and the plane took off about 9 a.m. in Calgary time, local time.
How did they search you?
Thoroughly. It was very intense, very, very intense. We had to wait in lines, and everybody was being searched very intensively.
How were they searching you, actually? What were they looking for?
Through the handbags, and they were like every small things they were questioning, and they were looking for some weapons, I guess.
Squeezing out toothpaste tubes, things like
everything, even cameras, even everything with battery-operated feed.
How long did that take? How many hours?
That process took about like 3 hours, and then we had to wait in the plane until we get the clearance to airway.
And how did you feel about getting on this flight 2 days after those 4 planes were crashed?
I know, terrible news, but I feel very happy to be home for now.
Relieved?
Very much, very much.
You're among about 170 people who were on that plane. What was the mood on that plane? And among these people who are getting off right now?
Everybody were anxious just to get to their final destination, and everybody was happy, and the scene in the terminal was just phenomenal. It was just like as if in the movies. I've never seen LAX like this, so many cops, and it was just like a ghost town.
Really?
Yes.
How emotional was this? Were the people on that plane?
Very emotional. Everybody was anxious just to get to their home and feel safe.
Why don't we back up on Tuesday when your flight was diverted?
Yes.
What was said on the plane? What did the captain say?
They just said that they cannot land in the U.S. and they had to land somewhere in Canada because all the airways were blocked, and we didn't know what was the reason until we landed in the airport and everybody tried to make phone calls.
And when you landed and you found that out, how did you feel?
We couldn't believe it until we went to the hotel and opened up the TV and actually saw what happened. And until now, it just doesn't sink in.
Did a thought pass through your mind that you could have been on one of those planes on that day? You were on a plane on that day.
Yes, I was. And actually, my brother is in New York right now. He was going to come from New York to LA. And I talked to him. He's okay. He's fine. So.
And you think you'll fly again soon?
For now, I don't know. I don't know what to say.
But maybe the security today gave you some confidence? What do you think?
Yes, if they do security like this, it'll build up the confidence in the people that they can fly again. But otherwise, it's really hard to say.
Viken, you live here in Los Angeles?
Yes, I do.
So it's good to be home, huh?
Yes. Thank you.
Good feeling. Thanks,
yes,
Viken. Thanks very much. All right, we've got a few more people here getting off and on buses here. A scene of confusion as people try to find their families and their loved ones. Excuse me, are you from the Alitalia flight?
Yes.
You are from the Alitalia?
Yes.
And how does it feel to be on the ground now?
I don't know, something problem because I don't know. Those guys saying right now, same dated, I don't know. Maybe it's different thing. Maybe stop today here and gotta go tomorrow. Maybe, I don't know.
Now, so you're waiting for a flight then? You didn't get off the Alitalia?
Flight.
There's a mix here of people getting off the Alitalia flight and looking to wait to get on flights as well. What are your feelings about flying today?
Well, I think so. Everybody has the same problem like that.
How worried are you?
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible, this problem like that, because I don't know why.
Are you fearful about flying?
Yes. And I lose almost 3 days right now here in Los Angeles. I supposed to stay last 3 days before over there in Italy.
Where are you from?
Italy.
From Italy?
Yes.
Right, so you came off this Alitalia flight.
That's right.
And now you're waiting for another flight.
There's other flight. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe coming and maybe no. Maybe cancel today, maybe coming tomorrow, or maybe, I don't know.
What did you think about the security today?
The security is terrible. It's hard, really hard. It's ask questions. Every person, open it and check it everything inside.
Well,
Yes.
what kind of things were they looking at? What were they
Looking for something, pistol or knife or something like that. You know, because
Did that make you feel better that security was so tight?
I think so. I think so. Feel bad because it's not necessary too much problem like this. It's before make it this problem, not right now, because right now it's terrible. Yes.
And let me ask you, when you found out what happened on Tuesday, you got off that plane, it was diverted to Calgary. How did you feel when you found out about the terrorist attacks?
Well, this is really terrible because this is the first time in the history this big problem, exactly in the center of the New York. I don't know why those guys, unbelievable. Those guys mentioned 1 year before it started this problem like this. But right now, it's really close, those guys, because it's exactly what they were doing. And Pentagon and two Tor, and this really center New York. I'm surprised, really surprised.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Really, first time
Thanks.
and this one.
First time. Thanks very
Really.
much. Thanks very much. Back to Darren in the studio. Back to Aaron in New York.
Chris, thank you. I wouldn't call it a studio, but you got the city right. Thank you for your work out there today. Quickly back to John Boz. John has been following now the threat of a collapse of the American Express building about a block or so from the Trade Center. John, are you able to hear me?
Aaron, yes, I hear you. We had a few moments ago, we had 3 blasts from the siren. That was their first evacuation order of the day. It appears that work has continued as normal. There was some threat that the Millennium Hotel may be coming down. There was a partial collapse here at the same time, or around the same time, of Building 1. That threat appears to have passed as far as the hotel is concerned, but we are told that the building is listing to a degree and has workers here very concerned. Right now, I'm at the site of tower number 1. It's an incredible site. The debris is, 100 feet tall. There are lines of men just moving debris by hand from buckets, passing it from one to the other. There is hundreds, thousands of people working here right now.
John, stay where you are. I wonder if just for a second we can put up the map that we have just to show where the buildings are, the relationships of these buildings that are listing or in danger of collapse. As you take a look at what was the World Trade Center complex on Tuesday morning and is now a disaster zone at the highest level now. So the American Express building is listing a bit, and that's what has people concerned. John, is it still relatively calm there? Are people moving calmly away?
It is extraordinarily calm given the circumstances. There was a brief moment when people ran, but still, even when they run away from this scene, it is in a calm, orderly fashion. People are told to get out, and they move. They move very quickly. We were told to move, and we ran with them. As far as the placements of buildings, if you recall, there was a lot of conjecture about the safety of Liberty Plaza, which is now being turned into a morgue. That is safe, but that is opposite the World Trade Center on Church Street. The Hotel is about a block up directly opposite the World Trade Center, and that took the brunt of the blast when the building collapsed.
So if I followed that, I think I did. We're talking about really a sort of a one-block area around the complex where these buildings are threatened. They're in a number of different directions, but basically it's a one-block area from Liberty Plaza, the American Express building on the west side, towards the West Side Highway, if I get the orientation correct,
Aaron,
and the Millennium Hotel.
Excuse me, I must go now, Aaron. I will call you straight back. Thank you.
Absolutely. Get out of harm's way. We don't want you hanging around and putting yourself at risk. We're going to keep a camera on that building, obviously, for as long as we can. Officials did go into One Liberty Plaza, which at about this time yesterday was thought to be in some danger of collapsing, and we were out there. We could see pieces of window falling off on at least the 2 sides of the building we were able to see. Some inspectors went into the building today, and at least for now, they say that building is okay. That building, among other things, houses the executive offices, the corporate offices of the NASDAQ. So much of what is in Lower Manhattan, as you all know now, involves Wall Street, involves financial markets around the world, American Express building, one of them. Martin Savage watching the building, watching the ground as well. Marty, I assume you are safe. Tell us what you could see.
Well, we're just talking actually with an engineer as to try to ascertain exactly what is going on. He is a volunteer that is working inside the building that is in question here. And he says that all of those people that were inside this building, and as Adam pointed out earlier, this is a building that was being used by the rescue teams here for a number of various reasons. Anyway, the building has been evacuated, and apparently we're also being told that work has come to a standstill. Now, I have to paraphrase here or point out that we are not allowed to go down in that area. We have not been allowed to go down in that area. Security is extremely tight, and especially on the media. And so we cannot go down there and sort of verify for ourselves. But we are being told that this is the building that is in question. And here is the problem, as explained, is the fact that when the World Trade Center buildings came down, the collapse, the force of them hitting the ground was literally like triggering an earthquake. And some of this area here, some of it especially, is on landfill. And as a result of that, structurally weakened buildings from the bottom up. And so you can look at a building, as we pointed out before, and say it looks okay. And we should point out this particular building on the other side does have extensive damage. But from here, it looks all right. But at the base, apparently there are problems. Now, there has also been reports that there had been a water leak in the basement that had been going on for some time, and that might also undermine the stability of the building. So, again, all eyes appear to be focused on this particular point. Activity out here on the West Side Highway has come to a standstill. Some vehicles have been turned around, and we are being told that activity as far as searching for survivors has also been brought to a halt. If it came this way, we'd have a problem.
Marty, stay with us here. Maybe we can highlight again the building so viewers are clear which building we are talking about, but it's the one with the point. There you go. American Express building. Lehman Brothers also has considerable office space there. In the last 3 days, it has been used, as Martin said, as a triage center. It's also been used as a makeshift morgue, as a number of buildings around the World Trade Center complex have been. We've referred any number of times today and in the last couple of days to the West Side Highway. The West Side Highway runs along the Hudson, obviously on the west side of Manhattan. It is the major thoroughfare. It runs pretty much the whole length of the island of Manhattan. As I walked down it yesterday, it is just lined with vehicles that are part of the rescue operation. Everything from dump trucks loaded with portable restrooms to generators with night lights to heavy construction vehicles to sanitation trucks, which in New York in the winter become snow plows, and they put snow plows on the front of them to help those sanitation vehicles clear out some areas. All of those trucks and assorted vehicles are lining the West Side Highway. You cannot drive down the highway in Lower Manhattan at all. It is all now being a staging area. So when we talk about the West Side Highway, don't think of it so much as a highway right now. Think of it as a very long and important parking lot, because that's what it is. There are people down at the base of the building still, and there were people in the building that are, as both Martin and John have reported, have been told to get out. It is not clear to me, and maybe Martin, you hear me best right now, it's not clear to me how many people were in the building at the time, and who precisely those people are. Are those medical personnel?
Well, I think these were people that were working for the various reasons you explained. Yes, there were medical personnel in there. I think that they were using it for storing equipment, also feeding and looking after in general the many hundreds and in fact over thousands of volunteers that are down here, as well as the professionals. It was thought to be a good place to put them because of the fact that it was a building that was relatively new and thought, at least up until this point, relatively stable. And it remains to be seen exactly if there is going to be a serious problem at this point. But we do know that the evacuation has apparently taken place. And we also know that activity out here has come to a standstill for some reason, and this might actually be what it is. The question is, how long does it go on? And if the building is such a threat, if there really is this problem, do they begin thinking about the prospect of bringing it down intentionally? There are a lot of reasons why you would want to. There are a lot of reasons why you would not. Number one is the fact that you would have to be very careful how you brought it down. But of course, any impact on the ground is likely to shift that debris pile. It is going to affect the opportunities and the possibilities of getting to those that may be trapped beneath the ground. And the hope is that if there are survivors, that's where they are, anywhere in the 6 levels that extended deep below the World Trade Center buildings. So
I think
it's
all
a
of
double-edged
us,
sword.
I think all of us, you, me, all of our viewers, have seen these planned implosions of buildings, and they are very complicated operations, and it requires that people go into the buildings placing explosives in very precise places so that the building implodes, doesn't go out. The problem in Lower Manhattan is that it is very tight. It's not that there's a lot of room for debris to fall without causing a problem. And as Martin pointed out a couple of minutes ago, the sense here was that when the plane hit, it created, or when the buildings collapsed, created essentially an earthquake. We have a structural engineer on the phone, Jim DeStefano. Jim and I talked, I think it was on Tuesday, and we talk again now. Jim, tell me, as you've listened to all of this, how we're doing and what you think is happening in that building.
I have to apologize because I don't have your broadcast here, so I don't know exactly what's going on. But it's my understanding that one of the adjacent building is in critical condition.
Well, they are evacuating the American Express building. There's some smoke coming out of the building. There is, as described to us, some listing of the building. And this is about a block to the west of the Trade Center building, 51 stories, 738 feet. Those are the stats.
Okay. Now, I understand that there have been a lot of broken gas mains and things like that in the neighborhood, which are a particular hazard in an instance like this. I'm not sure if that would be a contributor towards what you're observing right now.
How would that contribute to the listing of the building?
Well, if you had an explosion caused by a gas leak, that could cause that sort of effect on a building.
Okay, I mean, I have not heard any of our reporting there suggest that any of our reporters say they have heard an explosion. I'm not saying there wasn't one. We just haven't heard it. Anything else that might be causing this come to mind? Well, I realize you're not there and you can't analyze it. Give me your best guess, I guess.
We've got a lot of things that these buildings have been subjected to in the last few days. Just the ground shaking associated with the impact of the two towers falling and collapsing the way they did creates a seismic force on the ground not dissimilar to an earthquake. And that, of course, can do some serious damage to adjacent buildings and to their substructure. So it's very possible that some damage associated with the collapse of the adjacent buildings has now triggered some structural failure within the adjacent building.
At some point, assuming the building doesn't fall here, people like you, the structural engineers, have to go in and look at it and see how stable it is or is not. What do you look for in those situations?
Well, it's very difficult. You need to look at all the key structural components, look for signs of structural damage or structural failure. You look for members that have buckled or in the process of buckling. You look for deformed members. You look for anything that could be critical to the safety of the structure.
Okay. Jim, help me with what I didn't quite understand what a member was. Talked about a buckled member.
Well, a structural frame is comprised of a number of different structural members. There are beams, which are horizontal members. There are columns, which are vertical members. There are diagonal bracing elements that are also structural members. And you try and look at all these components and try and identify critical elements that are deformed or showing signs of structural distress.
Stay on the phone, Jim. I want to bring in John Voss, who's quite close to the area now. And Jim, as you listen to John, you may pick up some information that helps you analyze this for us. John, what do you got?
Aaron, we're being moved out, and again, a few moments ago we all stopped because they thought that there was, they heard something under the rubble. We're trying to work out which building is which in this area, which has been incredibly damaged by those terrorist attacks. The problem is that the buildings are covered in dust. They're so badly damaged, and they're just virtually unrecognizable. So when we talk about a particular building, quite often we're talking about two different things. I was talking about the Millennium Hotel. You were talking to me about the American Express building. Both those buildings, we believe, have suffered some sort of structural damage, and both are in some kind of danger. The American Express building is to the south of the World Trade Center. The Millennium Hotel is directly opposite to the north. So that's basically where we stand at this stage. Once again, the workers have stopped. They believe that they may have found or heard something underneath the debris, so I'll have to stop talking.
Okay, you stay safe. Jim, did you hear anything there that helps you analyze what you think might be going on?
It's hard from that kind of information to be very specific about what might be going on, but clearly when structural elements start to fail, you do get rumblings, you do get shuddering of the structure, and those are all early warning signs that something is on the verge of collapsing.
I'm just getting a report, and there's no elegant way to do this. Let me just read it to you. On this building, the American Express building, as they were moving people out, quoting Dr. William Bradley, who was an ophthalmologist. Dr. Bradley was treating rescue workers who were getting all manner of soot and fiberglass in their eyes, and he's been working on that. He says there was some panic in getting people out of the building. Some of the doctors who were working there got clogged in the revolving door. That, quote, there was a stampede of doctors trying to get out of the building. I'm never going to forget that. I thought I was going to die. He praised a group of firefighters who returned to the site shortly afterward, and on it goes. Martin Savage, let's keep an eye on this for a second and come back to it. I want to go back, Marty, to this rescue that took place earlier today, because it is, and we always use this word very sparingly, it was somewhat miraculous. The 5 firefighters rescued in an SUV. Tell us, update us if you can, and background those people who may just be joining us.
Well, as you say, it is a miraculous event that's taken place, although you have to keep it in the perspective of the tragic background in which it is played out. Essentially, this is what happened, and it was probably about an hour and a half ago. I guess time seems to be spinning by quickly with all the developments. There was a spot out in the area underneath the Twin Towers, it's believed under the World Trade Center building number 1, that had been marked out yesterday, as for some reason the rescuers, the searchers, felt that this was an area there could be some life. And then what happened? I'm just watching as people rush around. They went back today, and they began the earnest work of focusing on that area, lifting, removing debris. It was then that they revealed the roof of a Chevy Suburban that was a New York Fire Department vehicle. They eventually cleared down to the door levels and opened the door, and much to their amazement, they say that there were 5 firefighters inside, alive and well, after spending 2 days there. So that is the situation. Apparently, the chant USA, USA went up. I'm reporting live, Martin Savage, CNN, in Lower Manhattan.
Marty, thank you for that. And all of you, Martin, John, Adam, if you're still there, and Jim DeStefano, if you could stay with us a bit longer on the phone. I want to go to Atlanta, the airport in Atlanta. CNN's Bonnie Anderson is there. Bonnie, are planes coming in, leaving Atlanta yet, or are they preparing to?
Well, the airport is officially open, and I can tell you that the terminal behind me is a hive of activity, but there are still very few planes coming in and out of Atlanta at this time. Literally thousands of passengers are lined up in front of the counters trying to find out how they can leave and, more importantly, when they can leave. Most of these people were stranded for at least 2 days. And for most of them, though, the answers to their question is not going to be a happy one. It does not appear that most of them will be leaving anytime soon. Now, to give you an idea, Delta, which is headquartered here and by far the largest carrier out of Atlanta, normally has 900 flights in and out daily. That's about 80% of all flights through Hartsfield. But they expect just a few to operate today, not even 5% of their normal schedule. They say they need to move planes around, they need to move crews around, so there will be, as I said, quite a few disappointed passengers by the end of the day. Now, for that reason, airport managers are recommending that passengers call airlines before coming out to the airport, not just here, but across the country. We spoke with some of the flight crews and some of the passengers who have been stranded here for 2 days. They all say they're looking forward to getting home, and for some of them, looking forward to get back to work.
It's hard. We've all been together. We've stuck together, and the company's been there for us and made sure that we're okay. But we've all been there for each other because this is what we have right now.
I want to go home back to Orlando. So I heard that there was a flight out sooner than 10:10 tonight, so I'm here to do that.
Has the delay discouraged you, made you angry?
It makes me not want to fly again.
Despite the delays, a remarkable theme we're hearing from many of the passengers is that they're not feeling inconvenienced. They're not angry at the delays. They are angry at what happened in New York and in Washington, D.C., and they understand that the delays here were for their own safety. So Hartsfield is open, but right now, very few planes going in and out, and at this point, it looks like it could be several days before the airlines are operating again at full capacity. I'm Bonnie Anderson, CNN, reporting live. Back to you, Aaron.
Bonnie, thank you. There's so many changes that have to be implemented in so many different places. Some of them involve manpower, getting people that used to be at gates up to the front. The air traffic situation is just going to be very difficult and very slow, even when it gets back online, and you need, if you're going to fly, to allow a lot of extra time. Someone told me yesterday, Mike Miller, I think, of Aviation Daily, said allow 2 hours, even for a domestic flight. At the Pentagon, Christy Babcock joins us. Ms. Babcock is with a friend who is trying to find her husband, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Tell me the circumstances. Lay out the circumstances.
Well, my best friend's husband is in there, and her husband also happens to be my husband's best friend of 15 years. So we've just been waiting.
And how long have you and she been there waiting?
We've been here outside of the Pentagon since 1 o'clock yesterday morning.
You've been there since 1 o'clock yesterday morning?
Yes.
And are there facilities to support you, to take care of you, to feed you, to get you water, to get you counseling, and that sort of thing?
Well, as far as bathrooms, the media has been really great getting us into the only bathroom here, which is at the gas station. And as far as water and food, again, the media has been wonderful. They've been giving us food, water. We even had some lady walk up to us today and give us a cooler full of food, a 6-pack of water, some muffins, homemade muffins. Counseling, the Red Cross has been by a lot. They have come by, and we know them on a first-name basis now, and they've been talking with my friend Tracy, and they've just been listening to her and trying to help her get through this while we wait.
And Ms. Babcock, are there a lot of other Tracys there, a lot of other people who have gathered there as the search for their loved ones goes on?
Well, there are people gathered. There's a hotel in the area where all of the families are supposed to be gathering. When we got to that hotel Tuesday night, they said that nothing was going to be happening until about 9, 10 o'clock that next morning, and there was no way we could wait. My husband and I lived in this area. We knew some back ways to get to the Pentagon, and so we were able to get into where we're not supposed to be, which is with the media. And the media have fought to keep us here, and the police have been wonderful, and they've allowed us, given us special permission to stay.
You have to be careful. You're going to give us a good name here. Have people there, have they given up hope, or is there still hope?
some people have given up hope. I mean, take a look at the building. It doesn't look too hopeful. But, you know, Oklahoma City, that building was completely destroyed on one side, and there were still people being pulled out alive. We definitely have hope. And a lot of the firefighters who have been in there have come out saying it's always possible. You just never know.
And you've been there a long time, since 1 o'clock yesterday morning. How has your mood changed? How has your friends' mood changed? Does it get... Go ahead.
Well, Tracy is a rock. She's a very strong individual. And of course there's been ups and downs where, you know, you hear something or you hear about a body that's been pulled out and it's like, what if that's Eddie? That kind of thing. And of course there's times when we've cried. But we believe in God and we believe in miracles, and that's what we're holding out for.
Well, a miracle would be helpful. Christy, thank you for spending some time with us today. Our thoughts are with you and Tracy and all of the others who have gathered there. I'm reluctant to use the term good news here. There was some better news out of the Pentagon. It is now believed the death toll will be significantly lower than some of the early reports, which had it at 800. It's now approaching 200, but it does seem that it will be considerably lower than people originally feared. Back to Lower Manhattan, CNN's Martin Savage has more on the activities there. Marty.
Aaron, we're talking about the rescue of the firefighters that was pulled off earlier today. Obviously, the very good news amidst very bad news that is still being found out with the recovery effort that is going on. I'm joined by Jody Farabella. He is a police officer from Millville, New Jersey, and you were down there at the time when these firefighters were found. Tell us what was going on and what the reaction was.
Well, we arrived sometime around 12 o'clock last night, and there was just a numerous amount of people. When we finally got the go-ahead to go do our searches, we were in there with buckets and shovels, and it's just a slow process, and some of the things we found in there was kind of depressing, but we kept on looking, trying to find some survivors.
And then you did?
Yeah, we, as we were digging, everybody started screaming that a fireman was saved, and it was just unbelievable. Everybody started cheering, and it's just a chain reaction. USA, USA. It's just unbelievable. That's what we were there for. And it was just a great feeling.
And what does that do for the teams that are so hard at work there trying to find survivors?
I think everybody just started working harder, and people were screaming, that's one, let's go for two. And it was just, everybody was going crazy at that point.
How long have you been at it today?
I've been at it for about 10 hours.
You come back tomorrow?
I'm hoping so.
Jody Farabella, who is a police officer with the Millville Police Department, which is located in New Jersey, is one of thousands and thousands of volunteers that have come down to try to find someone, and he did. Aaron, back to you.
Hi, Aaron. Everyone was going crazy, he said, when they found them. Imagine the exhilaration, the elation that these men and women who have been down there now since early Tuesday must feel. They haven't had many moments like it, but what they must feel when they finally pull someone out of there alive and well. It is hard to imagine the joy they must feel and the energy it must give them to keep on working. Our senior White House correspondent, John King, joins us now at the White House. John.
Hello, Aaron. I want to bring you first a little breaking news development. A lot going on here in Washington, of course, both in public and in private, as the administration ponders a potential military response to these terrorist strikes. We know the administration putting pressure on the government of Pakistan to help. Pakistan, a neighbor of Afghanistan. Secretary of State Colin Powell spoke to the Pakistani President, General Musharraf, earlier today, asking for his cooperation as the United States tries to investigate this. And I have just received a statement from the President of Pakistan, again, General Musharraf, saying that Pakistan, quote, committing all of its resources in an effort coordinated with the United States to locate and punish those involved in these horrific acts. So a statement from the President of Pakistan just provided to us here at CNN, this after a 10-minute conversation with the Secretary of State, other diplomatic efforts by the Bush administration to win Pakistani cooperation in this investigation, significant because Pakistan, among the nations that recognizes the Taliban as the government of Afghanistan, the network of suspected terrorist Osama bin Laden, who Secretary Powell earlier today named as the #1 suspect in these attacks, obviously located in Afghanistan. So as the President ponders potential military responses and tries to build an international coalition not only to deal with this terrorist act but others, at least early signs of some cooperation from the government of Pakistan. Now, that issue came up earlier today when the President was in the Oval Office. He spoke to reporters after a telephone call to the Governor of New York and the Mayor of New York to touch base on the research and recovery efforts. Mr. Bush saying at that time that they were receiving reassuring words from the government of Pakistan, but that he wanted to see in the days ahead just how that developed. Mr. Bush in that conversation also talking about this horrific act, calling it the first war of the 21st century, and Mr. Bush saying the United States was preparing a response.
Make no mistake about it, my resolve is steady and strong about winning this war that has been declared on America. It's a new kind of war. And I understand it's a new kind of war. And this government will adjust. And this government will call others to join us to make sure this act, these acts, the people who conducted these acts and those who harbor them are held accountable for their actions.
Another role of the President and the First Lady. Here you see consoling the nation and the victims. The President at the Washington Medical Center earlier today visiting some of those burned when that jet crashed into the Pentagon across the Potomac River in suburban Washington, Northern Virginia. The President saying he was deeply moved by his appearance there. I spoke to the First Lady about it afterwards. This part of the public effort by the First Family to console the victims and their families, also to try to rally the nation. Again, though, I want to talk about breaking news here. The President this afternoon will meet once again with his national security team. We are told by senior administration sources discussion of potential military responses on the agenda for that session. As the administration ponders its options, one of the key questions was what kind of cooperation will it receive from nations around the world, not just predictable U.S. allies, but others as well. And again, we have just received a statement from the President of Pakistan, General Musharraf, saying Pakistan is providing all of its resources in an effort, and this part is significant, coordinated with the United States to locate and punish those involved in these horrific acts. Obviously, the administration will put that promise to the tests in the hours and days ahead, but perhaps a potentially significant development as the investigation continues and the Bush administration seeks some help overseas. Aaron?
John, a couple of questions in a couple of different areas. We heard Andrea Koppel reported earlier that the Secretary of State Powell, came closer than any administration official had so far to pointing the finger at Osama bin Laden. Are you hearing in the White House that name thrown around with more certainty than before, not just one of many, but as the one?
Certainly the prime suspect. The administration still saying it is not 100% certain that Mr. bin Laden is the architect of these strikes, but we are hearing from senior administration officials here at the White House, from the intelligence community, and from members of Congress who have been briefed by key administration officials. In the words of one senior official I spoke to, quote, everything points to the bin Laden network, the sophistication of this attack, some of the people involved, the conversations intercepted afterwards by U.S. intelligence and law enforcement officials. So certainly from the very beginning, they have put Mr. bin Laden at the top of the list, and we are told increasingly, as we now move into day 2 after these horrific strikes, that the evidence increasingly points to Mr. bin Laden. And of course, what the government asking for now is the cooperation of the Taliban in Afghanistan, the Pakistani government as well, to help deliver information not only on Mr. bin Laden's whereabouts, but we're told Secretary Powell asked the Pakistani government for any information it had about his recent operations. So certainly he is suspect number 1 as the investigation continues and as the President discusses more and more with his top military advisors potential responses.
What kind of leverage do we have with the government of Pakistan, John?
Well, not much, although there's been a rocky. Secretary Powell himself called it an up and down relationship. Pakistan, of course, for a long time in the Cold War was an ally of the United States, while India was aligned with the Soviet bloc. This administration, as the Clinton administration did in its closing days, has made a point of trying to build closer ties with India, the largest democracy in the world, and that, of course, causes tension with Pakistan. So it has been a hot and cold relationship. At times, President Musharraf has said things the United States has taken quite favorably. He, of course, took power in a military coup that the United States did not look upon favorably. So as Secretary Powell said today, it has been a hot and cold relationship, but certainly contacts and cooperation with the Pakistani government right now could prove very significant in this investigation and in any potential military operation the United States might decide to go forward with.
And John, let me change gears here quite a bit. A couple of hours ago, you sat down with the First Lady and talked about what has happened, what its impact was on her husband, on the country. What jumped out at you as you think about that interview now a couple hours later?
Well, this a woman who wanted to carve out a very different role as the First Lady, Aaron, than Hillary Rodham Clinton had. Laura Bush by no means wanted to be a spokesman on major policy issues, with the one exception of literacy and education just beginning to emerge there. Now, of course, she finds herself as the consoler in